By 1998, Sony Computer Entertainment had established itself as a dominant video game publisher and manufacturer with their first console, the PlayStation. As a Japanese company, their internal game development studio was based out of Tokyo. But as the Western and Asian markets started to diverge, Sony began buying European developers to make games tailored to that market. And in 1999, Sony decided that it would also be in their best interest to have a North American studio to make games for the single biggest gaming market in the world. So they internally created a studio in Santa Monica, cleverly calling it Sony Computer Entertainment Santa Monica Studio. And while their first game is remembered mostly for the engine it spawned, the studio will be forever associated with a franchise all their own, a series that reinvigorated and redefined an entire genre of gaming and proved that even a regional development team could create an international smash. When Sony Santa Monica was formed, the PlayStation 2 was already in the late stages of its design. So the company set straight to work on a next-gen game, one that would make full use of the new console's power. To that end, they decided to build their own engine from scratch. They built it for a racing game, one that would combine powerhouse graphics with huge backgrounds and fluid animations. The end result was Kinetica in October 2001. The futuristic racer took cars right out of the equation and strapped wheels onto the hands and feet of players. Combined with a vibrant, cartoony art style, the game's visuals were both smooth and gorgeous. So impressive was the engine that a host of PS2 games would choose to run it, including SOCOM Navy SEALs and the Jak and Daxter series. Sadly, this was to be the game's greatest legacy as it released to middling reviews and sales. But just at this time, a longtime Sony collaborator, David Jaffe, was brought on board the Santa Monica studio. The creator and developer of the famous Twisted Metal series, Jaffe had a strong record of making profitable, quality titles for the PlayStation and was thought to be just what the studio needed. As it turned out, they were right. Jaffe had grown up watching myth and magic hack-and-slash movies and thought the tone and style of those films would be perfectly suited to a kick-ass action game. Placing faith in the Twisted Metal creator, Sony gave him the go-ahead. With the working title Dark Odyssey, Jaffe's central idea was to give the players a vicious, violent character that wasn't held back by morals or the greater good like every other video game hero. Rather, this game would revolve around an absolute killing machine so filled to the brim with rage that practically anything or anyone the gamer came in contact with was dead meat. And they could actually become dead in any number of ways. Kick-ass, fluid, combo-based combat, spectacular magic spells based around Greek myths, or quick-time event mini-games unique to each monster. He continually pushed his crew to make every aspect of the game more brutal, more visceral, and more merciless. The game would be a space for the gamer to vent their frustrations in the most satisfying way possible. This led very early on to the idea of swords on chains, which would evolve into the game's most iconic and recognizable feature. All of this powered by the Kinetica engine. However, as setting and gameplay mechanics were Jaffe's chief focus, one thing that was missing during pre-production was an actual story. As such, the artists and level designers had to construct cool characters, monsters, and scenarios without any guiding narrative. Jaffe was convinced that the story would naturally emerge if a cool-looking character in a beautiful world had enough vicious monsters to fight. But while Jaffe was the creative force driving the game, he also recognized that the gamers themselves knew instinctively what worked and what didn't. And so, Sony Santa Monica extensively playtested their game, letting a chosen number of players with no prior knowledge of the game play through it. The studio carefully monitored every action, taking note of which sections confused them or gave them too much trouble. While the feedback was invaluable, nonetheless, Jaffe did put his foot down on a few points. Most notably, although nearly all testers asked to be given control over the camera, Jaffe insisted that the camera be fixed in the positions he programmed in to give it a more cinematic and compelling feel. But there was one section that the team felt was pretty solid on its own and was not playtested at all: the Hades mission towards the end of the game. They would pay for that mistake down the road. In March of 2005, God of War released to massive critical adulation and phenomenal sales. The game's blend of epic set pieces, clearly defined mission goals, gorgeous art design, and unrestrained combat all added up to one of the most intense and engaging action games ever made. The story ended up being that of fallen Spartan General Kratos, tasked by the gods with killing Ares, the god of war, who had earlier made Kratos kill his own family. But the revenge game put a heavy emphasis on puzzle solving and exploration, giving players a chance to catch their breath and use their heads, which in turn gave greater weight to the combat sequences. Its success left no doubt that Sony's attempt to appeal to specific regions with regional studios had worked. And in fact, God of Wars would extend beyond North America to Europe and Asia. With only 2 games under their belt, the Pacific studio had gone from upstart to AAA. There was no question that a sequel to God of War would be coming. But as they got to work on the game, the gods of Santa Monica would lose one of their own. Tune in next time to see how God of War evolved beyond its creator.